While most serial killings are attributed to male perpetrators and suspects, the lifeless, incomplete body found by the Mexican police on November 6, 2014 proved just how brutal a female criminal can be. A mother and psychotherapist who only attended to female clients and had once escaped justice after killing her first husband decided to tend to a male patient whom she fell in love with. But deep inside her, a darkness lurked. Emboldened by her past experience and a compulsive desire for control, romance turns into murder for the second time. In a story of how evil can be hidden under a beautiful face, this is the twisted case of Alejandra Lafuente. Combined with her well-structured body, the privileged woman, whose full name is Maria Alejandra Lafuente Caso, grew up in wealth. Her father, Alberto Dante Lafuente, was a well-known psychiatrist specializing in schizophrenia and manic depression, who made sure his daughter had everything she wanted. Maria was a beauty queen, and like most girls who were aware of their beauty, she cared so much about her looks. She was always seen in beauty salons, massage parlors, and spas, being so particular about her skin and fitness routine. She also did fitness exercises, yoga, and even breathing exercises. She was in shape and her skin glowed as she visited the beach often for a tan, and on cloudy days, she visited tanning salons. But Maria wasn't only about her looks, she had brains. She admired the success of her dad and saw him as a role model, deciding to follow in his footsteps by studying psychiatry at one of the best psychiatry schools in the country. She had good grades all through her study year and even graduated with honors. Her determination, outstanding brilliance, and of course her father's connections aided her in writing and defending her thesis on manic depression. She was indeed the proud daughter of a proud father. After her final exams, Maria changed her mind. She loved the mindset field but felt drawn to psychotherapy rather than manic depression and psychiatry. Besides, her father's most known practice was his patience experiment in therapy. She wanted to know how people felt and how she could help them. In a world where money rules, a license to practice psychotherapy wasn't much of a hard pull for Alberto, Maria's father. After achieving her license, she established an office in the heart of the city, and in no time, she started treating patients. Initially, all her patients were women who sought solutions and counseling for depression, eating disorders, low self-esteem, and even relationship matters. While her procedures worked for her clients, they didn't prove to work for her as her first marriage ended in a divorce. It was a very difficult period for her, because she was dedicated to repairing broken homes and women. But it wasn't a total disaster, as the failed marriage produced 2 children. 2 girls that took her beautiful looks, but their father's sense of humor. Although her ex-husband would always come back home every weekend to help take care of the kids and with other house chores, the stress that came with having 2 young kids was something Maria wasn't willing to accept. She felt taking care of them alone would bring her a step down in the beauty game, and this made her upset. She was mad at her ex-husband for making her go through the trouble of handling the kids all by herself. Since her freedom had been snatched, she only thought of doing the same to her ex-husband, and the one idea on her mind was to murder him. In reality, Maria wasn't emotionally stable. She had always had issues with either a friend, a family member, or a neighbor. According to her friend, she could be violent and would often resort to inflicting injuries on her victim. Nail scratches and marks were always seen on her ex-husband's body, arms, and neck when they were still married. Even though the reason for their divorce wasn't disclosed, sources claimed that physical and emotional abuse from Maria Alejandra was an additional reason. It's unclear why someone who helps people overcome pain loved to inflict it, but Maria had decided to kill her ex-husband, so she made a plan. One regular weekend when her ex-husband came visiting to help out, Maria thought to make it his last. When he approached the house and rang the doorbell, Maria answered but motioned for him to come inside through the back door because the front door was jammed. Her unsuspecting ex-husband obliged and strolled down the back door. He was used to the house and he couldn't wait to see his children. Unknown to him, the woman he was sharing a bed with was about to take his life. When he entered through the back door, Maria told him to join their youngest daughter in the bathroom and help round things off with her. He was there to help, so he immediately turned to the bathroom, but while on his way, he sensed that the house was awfully quiet. No sound from the children, no TV noise, nothing. He didn't think much about it, but he became a little suspicious when he got to the bathroom and found duct tape on the ground with a bath full of water and no child. He immediately knew something was wrong, but he wasn't given the chance to act, ask, think, or even change his position. Immediately, he felt a heavy bang at the back of his head and saw his blood splash all over the bathroom walls. He fell to the ground and died almost immediately. Maria went on to hit him again on the back of his head, but this time, her eldest daughter, who had just come back from a friend's house, stood just steps away from her mother as she witnessed the horrific end of her father's life. She knew her parents always fought and would sometimes resolve, but what she didn't know was that it could lead to her mom murdering her father. The little girl immediately rushed outside the house in search of help. She met a neighbor and explained what she had just seen, and immediately the police were alerted and Maria was arrested. She was taken to the police station and kept in a cell for 1 month before her first hearing. Her influential father, Alberto, couldn't watch his daughter suffer in prison, so he made sure to get the best of lawyers for her, and on the day of trial, Maria Alejandra denied the allegations. Her lawyers backed her up with their well-planned story of self-defense. They claimed Maria's ex-husband was just too jealous of her. She had a very attractive face and body, and she could draw any man of her choice to her. They claimed that on the day of the attack, he entered the house through the back door unannounced in an attempt to find another man in bed with her, and when he didn't, he decided to jump on Maria, who had no choice but to defend herself. After taking into account the evidence that was obtained and the testimony of Maria's eldest daughter, judgment was handed down on the 14th of June 2012. Maria Alejandra was sentenced to only 1 year and 4 months in prison, thanks to the combined effort and influence of her lawyers and her father's money. Maria, on the other hand, wasn't pleased. She didn't want to stay in prison, as it would tarnish the image she had created for herself. She demanded an appeal, and a few months later, an appeal was submitted requesting that the case be dismissed. They stood firmly in the defense of self-defense, selling the story of a poor woman who suffered domestic violence but was still tortured in prison. The Human Rights Campaign eventually worked, and the court reconsidered the case and found the defense not guilty. Maria Alejandra had her wish, but not entirely everything. She was free, but she still needed a companion, someone who could be responsible for her daughters. She needed her Prince Charming. She, however, returned to work, providing physiological counseling, but this time on a bigger level. She had created an image of a woman who fought through the pain of gender inequality and domestic violence and won in the end, and this only made her more popular. It helped her to attract bigger clients, one of whom was the ex-wife of a man she was going to call her perfect match, Alan Carrera, her chance at love and her eventual Achilles heel. Alan Carrera Cuellar was the son of Adrian Carrera Francis, a large Mexican industrialist. Adrian, his father, was formerly the Central District Head of Special Services and had achieved tremendous success in his career. His business was, however, divided into two. While one part was legal, the other part, a secret very few people knew about, was illegal. He was also a member of a criminal organization involved in the transit of psychoactive chemicals to the United States. The organization was in charge of a minor fraction of the psychoactive substance traffic in southern Mexico, with their base on the border and heavily guarded by hired police officers. When city police got the information, he was arrested and he was eventually sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, he was released early on July 18, 2000 because of the Witness Protection Program. After his release, he dedicated his time and attention to his son, Alan, and to his genuine business, which became a huge success. Alan grew up adapting to his father's beliefs and hunger for success. He wanted to become an entrepreneur just like his dad, and after he graduated, he was drawn to the home appliance section. Despite his young age, he managed that section until he was able to stand on his own. Alan expanded his firm and established a nationwide chain of supply outlets. Although his firm wasn't as big as his father's, it was still profitable. Young, good-looking, and successful, different women lurked around him, but he only had eyes for one. He has had a boyhood crush since high school, one that he spoke highly to his father, praising how smart, gorgeous, and attractive she was. She was also from a respectable background, so he proceeded, believing they were destined for each other. The marriage was quick and, for the time, enjoyable, but his frequent absences from home affected the marriage. She wasn't happy with how busy Alan was, so she filed for divorce. For Alan, the event turned his life around. He started drinking and entertaining bad thoughts. he sought different coping mechanisms like books, AA meetings, and even trips, but separating from the love of his life wasn't easy. Nothing worked for him. The loneliness was just too much, so he thought to seek professional help. Since he wasn't the only one going through the pain, he and his now ex-wife thought to give it another try, but they decided to make sure they understood everything before restarting the relationship again. This led them to the well-known and highly sought-after therapist Alberto Dante Lafuente, who also happened to be the father of Maria Alejandra Lafuente. When the couple got there, Alberto told them that due to his defined principles in therapy, he wouldn't be able to attend to both of them, so he referred Alan's ex-wife to his daughter, Maria Alejandra. He, however, didn't disclose the information about who she was to them, but he encouraged them to take the bold step as he trusted her expertise. Alan continued therapy with Alberto, while Alan's ex-wife went in search of what she prayed would be a solution to her already failed marriage. When she spotted physiotherapist Maria, she was amazed by the praise and reviews she had. She was so trusting of Maria that she spilled every piece of information about her marriage. At first, Maria Alejandra promised to fix the problem, but later on, as Alan's ex-wife described her husband's looks and his potential, Maria thought she had found the right man for herself. She then insisted that Alan's ex-wife bring her ex-husband for a therapy session the next day, promising that after one day of sessions with him alone, he would return home to a new person. This was exciting to Alan's ex-wife, but unknown to her, she was going to introduce the man she still loved to a woman who would not only snatch him away from her, but would also kill him in the end. Alan showed up the next day. On seeing him, Maria concluded in her heart that she was going to get him no matter what, so she used her beauty and knowledge of psychology to confuse him. She knew her charm had worked when the confused man asked her out on a coffee date. Initially, she refused, giving him the impression that she wasn't an inappropriate lady and that she respected work ethics, but she later gave in as that was what she wanted. Their relationship grew so fast and even more intimate, and in time, it was difficult to keep it a secret as Alan's ex-wife found out about the affair between her ex-husband and their therapist. She was so upset and angry about everything. Unsure about the right step to take, she reported it to the doctor's ethical committee, but Maria wasn't going to let that happen. Maria was skilled at manipulating her way into people's lives, and she succeeded once again, persuading Alan's ex-wife to drop the case and to also leave her ex-husband because, indeed, the bright future she had once promised them was no longer possible. The new couple started a love journey that both enjoyed, and just a few months after their coffee date, they decided to start living together. The relationship was a much-needed completion for Maria. Alan wasn't only a wonderful man, he was the best stepdad to her kids. 2 months after they moved in together, they decided to legalize their union, so they planned towards it. Maria was happy and so was Alan, but what he didn't know was that deep down, his soon-to-be wife had a dark side. Alan didn't even bother to ask why a person who specializes in fixing broken homes divorced her husband. Soon enough, the event that followed revealed why, but unfortunately, Alan would not be alive to learn his lessons. In April 2014, Alan decided to travel back home to visit his family, and he used the opportunity to inform them about his newly found love and his upcoming wedding to her. After telling his parents about everything, they were taken aback by how long it took them to find out. They had never seen or heard from Maria Alejandra before, and it was weird that they were informed only a week before the wedding. They weren't happy, but they supported their son. On getting home to Maria, Alan was instructed by his new lover never to contact her friends and relatives. She knew he might learn just enough to stop the marriage. She also made sure that Alan's family was not invited either. Invitations were never sent out for the wedding, which was attended by just a few people, but the bride's father, Alberto, attended. The wedding was also registered only 1 week after Alan's trip back home. After the wedding, everything seemed to go smoothly, but it didn't last long as the beast inside Maria emerged. A few months after the wedding, Alan isolated himself from his family. He rarely called or communicated with them. Alan's friends, however, noticed how Maria became. She would often act inappropriately, both in public and at home. She easily lost her temper and would always fight with her husband, disregarding the environment and situations. Because of this, Alan was publicly embarrassed so many times, and this eventually limited his time with his friends. The couple was always in one quarrel or another. Alan was, however, a secretive person, so he never disclosed the ugly incidents that always took place inside the house with his wife to anyone. No one knew what happened behind closed doors, and it remained that way until it couldn't. Eventually, Maria started suspecting her husband as he began keeping late nights. She would later speak in court about how her husband frequently beat her up and humiliated her in every manner conceivable. She hated how he responded to women, and when she saw racy content on his phone, she became more enraged. She, however, tried her best to save the relationship, but when she confirmed her husband's infidelity, she couldn't take it anymore. She didn't want the marriage anymore, so she decided to end it and maintain her peace in a way she was familiar with: murder. She spent her time devising a perfect murder plan, and unfortunately, it worked. Alan continued his normal life. He didn't communicate much with his family, but he couldn't escape or miss the yearly feast of his grandfather's birthday that was coming up. It was a special celebration for them. But before he left for the party, his family told him not to come with his wife. They said her presence was not welcome. This made things even worse for the couple. It irritated him, but he had to go. He attended and was glad to meet with his family, but sadly, that was the last time they were going to see him. On the 31st of October 2014, Alan's family received a message that he had gotten home safely after the birthday celebration. For the next few days, everything appeared normal, but then suspicions began to grow when he was absent from work for a long time. It was unlike Alan, as everyone knew he took great pride in his work. Since he wasn't reachable, things continued to go on at work, but soon the opening of a new store was at hand, and the presence of the head of the firm was needed, but sadly, he was nowhere to be seen. It would later be discovered that Alan was missing because his wife, Maria Alejandra Lafuente, had killed him. On Alan's return from the birthday party, the couple had another heated argument. That day, she slipped sleeping tablets into the milky drink Alan had completely consumed before going to bed. When she was sure that he was sleeping, she suffocated him with a pillow, deriving intense pleasure from watching her pitiful husband struggle for air before losing consciousness. But she didn't know how to dispose of the body. She hadn't particularly thought about that part of her grand scheme. Now she didn't have enough, and she had a big problem on her hands as Alan was very heavy. Time was running out, and she needed to act fast. She quickly went to her neighbor's vegetable garden to retrieve an electronic saw, and then she cut her husband's body into pieces. She was knowledgeable, so she knew that if his fingers and teeth were missing, even if the bodies were found, they would never be able to identify him. So, after pulling his teeth and chopping off his fingers, she proceeded to stuff the pieces of his body into different disposable trash bags. She then placed all the bags into a big bag so she could go unnoticed when leaving to dispose of the body parts of the man who married her. Maria Alejandra decided to leave the house very early the next morning when the day was still dark. But unluckily for her, it turned out that an elderly neighbor who suffered from insomnia observed the odd Maria from her window. The neighbor wondered about the very early departure and also why Maria's husband didn't assist her in lifting such heavy luggage. She also noticed that Maria acted suspiciously, as she kept gazing in different directions. Maria went on to drop the different bags in different communities so that she could easily cover her tracks, and then she returned home by daybreak, further confusing the vigilante neighbor. After that, Maria went on with her customary everyday routine, but not for too long. On November 6, 2014, the Mexican Police Department discovered the first bag of what was Alan's remains with no finger or teeth. Immediately, the entire police force was put on alert since the look of things suggested a very heinous crime. With all hands on deck, the other bags containing the different parts of the body were found less than a day later. They then took the body parts to a forensic laboratory where scientists immediately determined that all the body pieces belonged to the same victim. However, with the absence of the fingers and teeth, the identity was impossible to determine. Back at the residence Maria shared with her deceased husband, she tried to play smart but instead made things worse for herself. Maria took her husband's phone and sent nerve-calming messages to his family members, telling them they were going on vacation and would be unavailable and reachable for some days. She didn't know Alan had stopped telling his family every piece of information about his life. On seeing the message, it came off as strange, but Alan's relatives thought a change was starting to occur until they got a call that was too suspicious to ignore. Maria's father, Alberto, had not seen his daughter for a long while, and her patients were all concerned about their inability to attend therapy sessions since she was always absent. Alberto called his son-in-law's family to ask if they knew where his daughter was, but got no satisfactory answer, and this left a disturbing thought in the minds of Alan's family. Alberto later called to inform them that his daughter had been seen and that she was in the hospital under care as she suffered severe stress due to her husband's beatings and infidelity. The news terrified Alan's family, and they sought to locate him. When that proved impossible, they reported it to the police. Body parts were being discovered and someone was missing, so forensic experts decided to match the characteristics of the recently found bodies to those of Alan. The similarities turned out to be 100%. His family also identified him. It was then ruled that the poor businessman was dead. Investigators searched his home and car, and that was when they discovered something truly horrifying. In the backyard of his house, they found a heap of sand mold, and after digging, the man's fingers and teeth were found. Investigators also found blood in one of the rooms and the boot of the car. Maria Alejandra was immediately arrested. Initially, she denied being responsible, just like in the case of her first marriage. But the testimony of the elderly neighbor changed everything. The estimated time of death coincided with the time the neighbor gave. Also, footage from a CCTV camera proved Alan came back that day and never left. It turns out Maria had used her influence to get a strong sleeping tablet that only doctors could purchase, and the knowledge of this only aggravated the case. Just like the first, her father, Alberto, tried his best to get her off the hook, but he didn't succeed. He could only succeed a little in keeping the news from the public, as it would tarnish his reputation. On December 14th, the jury sentenced Maria to life in prison with hard labor due to the use of her position to commit a crime. Unfortunately for Maria, the case of her first husband resurfaced, and Maria Alejandra Lafuente was eventually sentenced to death, which was very rare in Mexico. Her crime called for it, and she got what she deserved. She wasn't allowed to appeal, and every property of her late husband was transferred to his family, but that didn't change the fact that Alan was gone. On that sad note, we have come to the end of today's video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. See you in our next video.